Imagine you're sprinting through this rotting toxic forest, right?
Sounds terrifying already.
Oh, it is. You're being hunted by a giant black tarantula, and your only weapon of defense is like a World War II era Bible.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So today, learner, we are taking a deep dive into an absolute fever dream of a text. We're unpacking part 24 of a larger narrative, and it's called Elisa's Escape and the Golden Train.
It really is a wild ride.
It totally is. Our mission today is to decode this hyper-visual, surreal story. I mean, it basically acts as this massive collision between a gothic horror novel, a modern military thriller, and, well, the Book of Revelation.
Right, it pulls from all those genres simultaneously.
Exactly. So we are going to track the relentless rapid-fire shifts in reality that happen in this text, and we'll explore how this narrative uses these extreme, almost blinding contrasts between pure light and just rotting darkness.
And, the landscape we are walking into today is what you call a classic descent and ascension narrative. It's a psychological and spiritual gauntlet.
A gauntlet is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, because the text constantly forces both the protagonist, Elisa, and you, the reader, to navigate this world where the boundary between physical survival and spiritual warfare has just completely collapsed.
Right, and it does not ease you into this concept at all. The very first frame throws us right into the deep end. We're in this dark, rotting forest, looking at a black swamp that is just swarming with these bony, hairy devils.
It's incredibly graphic right from the start.
Definitely. And in the center of this swamp is a black, pyramid-shaped temple made of bones. Inside, on this leather floor, there's a symbol drawn with salt and candles.
Which sets up that ritualistic feeling.
Exactly. And hovering above it is a black heart-shaped stone. But the truly terrifying part is what this stone is doing. It is literally sucking black blood and death straight from the roof.
Right, while black hooded angels float around it, chanting spells. The imagery there is specifically designed to represent this ultimate consuming evil.
It feels almost alive, you know?
That's exactly it. Look at the specific mechanics of that stone. It doesn't just passively sit there like some symbol of bad luck. It actively feeds.
Right.
It operates like a black hole of despair, pulling in the dark energy of human sacrifices. The author's establishing that the antagonistic force in this world isn't just an obstacle. It is a sentient, starving void.
And then, out of nowhere, we get this incredible whiplash. Elisa wakes up. She's sweating, but she's in a beautiful, peaceful log cabin.
A total shift in tone.
Completely. A wooden cuckoo clock is chiming. She smells fresh logs, sees red roses in a green embroidered vase, and she's just looking out a window at a gorgeous larch forest.
The very jarring transition.
It really gave me total Inception vibes, honestly. It's that trope of waking up from a nightmare into a reality that, well, might actually just be another layer of the vision. So how does this layered reality prepare us for what's coming?
Well, the author is highly intentional with that blurred boundary. We are seeing two deeply contrasting realities side by side.
Right, the light and the dark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is the external physical beauty of her waking life in the cabin, and then there is the internal spiritual reality of that blood-sucking pyramid that's still lingering in her psyche.
So they're basically bleeding into each other.
Yeah. And to survive the inevitable collision of these two worlds, Elisa needs anchors. She needs something to tether her to sanity.
She certainly gathers some very specific grounding elements right after waking up. First, she puts on a black hoodie, and it features a white galloping horse on the back.
A very specific detail.
Yeah, and then we learn she has striking green eyes. In this really fleeting moment, the text describes glowing white crosses appearing in her irises.
Which is such a striking image.
It really is. After that, she goes to a bookshelf and pulls out her grandfather's wartime Bible.
And we need to view these details not just as mere wardrobe choices or, character quirks, but as spiritual armor being equipped.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. She opens the Bible to the Book of Revelation, specifically reading the passages about Jesus returning on a white steed.
Tying back to the horse on her hoodie.
Exactly. And she keeps a photograph of her grandfather in his military uniform, also mounted on a white horse. On the back of that photo is a poem about the Lord's white war steeds and a two-edged sword piercing that evil dragon.
It sets up a very heavy theme of holy militant combat.
It does. But immediately following this intense preparation, she just goes for a peaceful stroll. She walks barefoot into the forest, spots 10 white-tailed deer staring at her with dark eyes, and finds a secret clearing full of white Arctic starflowers.
A moment of total serenity.
Yeah, she just lies down and falls asleep.
The narrative requires this calm, before the literal storm. By anchoring Elisa to the beauty of the natural world and tying that to her grandfather's militant faith, the story communicates the actual stakes.
Right, what she stands to lose.
Exactly. The dark forces we saw in the pyramid aren't just coming to kill her physical body. They want to consume the beauty she's experiencing. They want to sever her connection to faith.
Well, while she's sleeping under the fireflies, she hears the voice of God. It tells her that her late husband, Toivo, and by the way, his name literally translates to hope.
That is a crucial detail.
Right. It tells her that Toivo is waiting for her in what it calls the Jewel Mansion. We are then shown a heartbreaking flashback of him flatlining in a hospital room, their diamond and emerald rings glowing in the sterile light.
Tying her ultimate motivation to hope is essential here. The memory acts as an internal shield.
Because things are about to get really bad.
Yeah. When the external world begins to literally rot around her, she has a promised destination, that Jewel Mansion, to drive her forward.
And the rotting starts almost immediately after that memory. She wakes up in the forest again, and the environment has turned violently hostile.
The nightmare is bleeding into reality.
Exactly. The fireflies vanish, the moonlight dims, the spruce trees suddenly look like dark, threatening hands reaching for her, and out of the shadows emerges a black-hooded dwarf riding a growling black wolf with red eyes.
That is such a classic Gothic horror image.
It is, and the dwarf is carrying a staff topped with a black pearl.
A pearl that the text specifically notes is reflecting screaming souls. So the psychological invasion has officially begun.
She sprints back to the cabin, but the sanctuary is just gone. The peaceful meadow is swallowed by mist. The tall grass is swarming with worms that are devouring the corpse of a white-tailed deer.
Which is a direct, grotesque corruption of the majestic deer she watched earlier.
It's awful, and the log cabin itself has transformed into a small black castle. It's leaking this green liquid mold and has a door handle crafted out of black bones.
The total inversion of her safe space.
Great. She hears agonizing screams from inside, a voice welcomes her to hell, and then she wakes up again.
The boundaries between the dream state and waking reality are just entirely dissolving at this point. The cycles of descent into horror and ascension into temporary safety are accelerating.
It's dizzying, so she wakes up sweating in the cabin to the sound of a grandfather clock. She starts frantically praying in tongues. And specifically, the text notes, she is praying in Koine Greek.
That is a brilliant mechanical detail.
Really, why Koine Greek specifically?
Well, Koine Greek is the original language of the New Testament.
Yeah.
In a world where reality is being corrupted by demonic illusions, praying in the foundational, uncorrupted language of the text represents a direct, unfiltered link to divine power.
Oh, wow, so it's like a direct hotline.
Exactly. She is bypassing the corrupted modern world to tap into ancient authority.
That makes total sense. While she's doing this, she receives a vision of a bright waterfall, her husband Toivo, and his mother smiling, with Jesus' voice again mentioning the Jewel Mansion.
Reinforcing that anchor of hope.
Right. And this brings us to a massive structural pivot in the story. We transition from this ancient, mystical dread to something completely different.
A very abrupt shift.
Yeah. Toivo's mother's friend, a man named John, just kicks open the cabin door. He's driving a red SUV. He tells her a storm is coming. They jump in, and suddenly we are in the middle of a kinetic, Michael Bay-style action sequence.
It is quite the gear shift.
It's insane. John is drifting a modern vehicle onto a forested highway, dodging a massive logging truck by inches. They speed south and drive straight into an enormous military invasion.
Not just demons, but actual troops.
Yes, armored vehicles, cannons, low-flying fighter jets, and attack helicopters. John looks at the sky and declares, "The Black Angels have attacked." I have to be honest, I was laughing out loud at the absolute absurdity of this scene.
It does sound a bit wild on the surface.
Right. Like we just had a dwarf riding a wolf with a soul-screaming pearl, and now the ancient forces of spiritual darkness are deploying paratroopers from fighter jets.
The whiplash is intense. But consider the psychology of apocalyptic storytelling for a moment.
Okay, I'm with you.
Authors throughout history have always utilized the most terrifying, overwhelming imagery available to the culture of their specific time. In antiquity, the ultimate unstoppable force was like a multi-headed dragon or a leviathan.
Right, because that was the pinnacle of scary myths back then.
Exactly. But for our modern consciousness, the most overwhelming mechanized force of destruction is the industrialized military complex.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah. The author is merging metaphysical evil with modern mechanized terror to show that spiritual warfare infests the very systems and technologies we build today.
That makes it so much darker. So, as they're driving, the radio crackles to life. A reporter screams about cities being bombed, and then the car's digital clock literally stops at exactly 6:66.
Which is a profound mechanism.
Stopping the clock at the number of the beast, right?
Yes, but it's also about time itself,
Yeah.
a core law of physics and rational human order breaking down. The author is signaling the end of the rational universe.
And right after that, a chilling voice broadcasts over the radio, which John identifies as the Antichrist before he just smashes the dashboard.
Pure chaos is taking over.
Completely. They look out the windshield and see this apocalyptic cloud wall rolling toward them. It's constructed of screaming skulls, flashing with lightning, and it is actively disgorging black fighter jets.
The blending of the spiritual and the mechanical again.
Yeah. John yells, "The soulless are coming!" and grabs an automatic machine gun from the back seat. Thousands of black-suited paratroopers rain from the sky, blowing into terrifying horns as they hit the asphalt.
It's a sensory overload.
It really is. John opens fire from the window, they're running over bodies, and then a helicopter swoops over and spits a corrosive black net onto the SUV. The net literally melts the car.
The technology turning against them.
John lets out an agonizing death scream as he literally melts into the chassis of the vehicle. Elisa is thrown from the wreckage into the bushes, losing consciousness. I mean, the author throws the ultimate modern military machine at them, and it is just absolute carnage. Why is modern armor so entirely useless here?
It perfectly illustrates the total failure of worldly physical defenses against spiritual corruption. John attempts to solve a metaphysical crisis with a mechanical solution, an SUV and a machine gun.
Which clearly doesn't work out for him.
Not at all. In this narrative framework, physical violence cannot harm spiritual entities. John's reliance on human technology ensures his destruction. He is literally consumed and melted down, along with the machine he trusted.
Well, Elisa survives because she's thrown clear of it.
Exactly. By being thrown from the vehicle, she is stripped of all modern protection and forced back into a primal reliance on faith.
So she wakes up completely alone. But before she regains full consciousness, she experiences this vision of a heavenly wedding with Toivo in a tuxedo.
Another flash of hope.
But the vision sours really quickly. Blood starts pouring from his eyes, nose, and mouth, and he rattles out the words, "Flee, Elisa." She wakes up stumbling through an environment the text calls the Forest of Death.
We're firmly back in a mythic Gothic landscape now.
Yeah, all the modern technology has completely melted away.
The environment reflects her internal vulnerability. She's stripped bare, entering the most hostile terrain yet.
And the detail here is incredibly grim. Green mounds are covered in poisonous fly agarics, those classic red and white toadstools. Giant spider webs drape across the canopy, flocks of bats swarm overhead, and she is being actively hunted.
The tension is ramping back up.
It is. She glances back to see a black-hooded angel with clattering jawbones inside a bloody skull, riding a massive black tarantula. Then she runs into the macabre centerpiece of the forest.
The trees, right?
Yeah, the trees are hung with chains and huge metal hooks bearing human and animal corpses. The text describes it in a deeply chilling way. It says, "It looks like the trees were decorated by some sick Santa Claus."
Wow, the author is weaponizing concepts of joy and life.
Yeah, she actually vomits from the terror.
I mean, the decorated trees are a complete perversion of the tree of life, or the festive joy of a Christmas tree just twisted into a monument of slaughter. And the tarantula capitalizes on one of humanity's most common primal fears.
But this is where Elisa's dynamic fundamentally shifts. She doesn't keep running. She stops, turns to face her pursuer, and pulls her grandfather's Bible from her bag. She begins to pray.
She's taking a stand.
Exactly. And this isn't a quiet, meditative whisper. The text describes fiery letters physically floating out of the pages of the Bible into the air, forming the sentence, "Every weapon that rises against you will be ineffective."
The word literally becoming manifest.
Yes. Instantly, the entire forest bursts into a raging inferno. A massive, burning spruce branch snaps off, flies through the air like a spear, and completely pierces the black angel and the tarantula, melting them on the spot.
It's incredibly dramatic.
It's almost like she's deploying a software patch against a virus. John tried to shoot the computer with a machine gun and failed. Elisa speaks the source code, the divine word, and the system aggressively corrects itself, purging the corruption.
That's a fascinating way to frame it.
But there is a paradox here, I think. Elisa is this peaceful protagonist who loves flowers, yet her act of faith results in this fiery annihilation. How do we square this peaceful character with such extreme violence?
Well, the distinction lies between human violence and divine consequence. John's machine gun was a human attempt to control chaos through murder. Elisa's weapon is the word.
So it's fundamentally different in nature.
Precisely. In apocalyptic traditions, divine truth is often depicted as a consuming fire that burns away impurity. She's committing an act of physical violence. She's invoking a higher reality that evil simply cannot withstand.
Ah, I see.
Notice that the fire doesn't harm her. It purifies the space around her. The branch piercing the tarantula isn't an act of murder. It's the natural order violently reasserting itself against an unnatural abomination.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So dodging these falling, burning branches, she escapes the forest and reaches a clearing. She looks down into a valley containing a gloomy city. She runs down the hill, and a black, patterned iron gate creaks open by itself, inviting her in.
Transitioning into the next phase.
And this brings us to what I found to be the strangest structural shift in the whole text. We go from a blazing, apocalyptic forest battle to, well, a puzzle.
A puzzle.
Yeah. She walks into a rotting garden featuring a green fountain bubbling with acid. She pulls a respirator from her pocket, which she had left over from renovating her cabin, and puts it on. Then she finds a thick garden glove on the ground.
Very specific items to gather.
Right. On the wall is a plaque written in Hebrew, which she translates as, "Key in the middle of the spring, key to the city of joyous people."
It sounds like an initiation trial.
It felt exactly like playing a point-and-click adventure game or being stuck in an escape room. I've got to admit, I was completely thrown off here. She combines a respirator, a glove, and translates a clue to pull a lever in a pool of acid. Did the author just lose the plot here? Why slow down a global apocalypse for a localized riddle?
The author isn't losing the plot, they're shifting the mechanics of progression. Surviving an apocalypse in a spiritual narrative isn't just about outrunning the darkness. It requires active transformation.
Okay, so it's a test.
Yes. Up to this point, Elisa has been a victim, constantly fleeing. The burning of the forest was her turning point where she claimed her power. Now she must prove she is willing to intentionally sacrifice her physical comfort to move forward.
Ah, so the trial demands an active, calculated choice to suffer for a higher goal.
Exactly.
She certainly pays that toll. She puts on the glove, reaches into the bubbling acid, and turns a lever to the right. The acid is so potent it corrodes the glove and melts the skin off a part of her hand.
It's a brutal sacrifice.
It really is. She pulls it out in sheer agony just as the door to the garden cabin finally opens.
She accepts the physical suffering required to access the next stage. The idea here is that the body must be broken to secure the passage of the soul.
While she rushes inside the cabin, finds a sink, and plunges her blistered, throbbing hand under cold water. She prays, specifically focusing her memory on a story of Jesus healing a leper. Miraculously, her hand brightens, the blisters melt away, and her skin is completely restored.
And this solidifies her transformation from victim to initiate. She has moved from enduring worldly suffering to experiencing divine restoration. It proves she is ready to leave the physical battlefield behind entirely.
So she walks to the front door of the cabin, opens it, and steps out into an evening dusk cobblestone street lined with beautiful Victorian houses.
A complete atmospheric shift again.
It's so jarring, it's quiet, dusky. From far away, she hears the whistle of an old train. Rain begins to fall, and the Victorian street lamps flicker on. A church bell chimes, just ding-ding, and the clatter of hooves approaches.
The imagery is very cinematic.
Yeah. A carriage pulled by white horses arrives. Lightning flashes, and suddenly, without even climbing in, she is simply teleported onto a comfortable seat inside. The logic of the physical world has been entirely abandoned here.
We have fully entered the realm of magical realism. The narrative is no longer concerned with the physics of movement. It is operating purely on the logic of spiritual transition.
A voice speaks directly to her soul. Midnight bells ring, horses to the church the travelers took. They ride past houses with candles flickering in the windows, arriving at a massive medieval church.
A sanctuary.
Yes, and the architecture is detailed. There are 2 gargoyles over the doors, knight statues guarding the stairs, and a fresco of Jesus carrying a sheep. She walks inside, a gloomy organ is playing, and she sits in the back pew.
She's gathering the final pieces.
Right. She takes out her grandpa's Bible, opens it to the Psalms, and finds a literal golden key taped to the page. She walks to the patterned wooden altar, finds an old chest, and uses the key to snap the lock open.
And what does she find?
Inside sits a palm-sized emerald glowing with a brilliant green light. Underneath it is a message: the color of life, the rainbow of life, above the throne of God.
The author is meticulously color-coding the mechanics of final salvation here. Every item she has gathered is a concentrated symbol of life, meant to counteract the specific aesthetics of the darkness she's faced throughout the journey. The green emerald directly opposes the red and black elements of the demonic forces.
Okay, that makes sense. She packs the emerald, steps back outside into the rain and lightning, and is instantly teleported once more. This time, she appears on a misty train platform.
The final vehicle.
Yeah, a steam locomotive pulls up, parting the fog. A speaker system announces, "The last train to paradise leaves from platform 7. She steps into an old dining car filled with red leather and Victorian wood.
The detail of the setting really emphasizes the transition.
There's bread and wine waiting on a green marble table, and she takes communion.
She is spiritually preparing herself for the final confrontation. The concept of the train here acts as a psychopomp.
The psycho what?
A psychopomp. In mythology, a psychopomp is a creature, spirit, or in this case, a vehicle, whose sole purpose is to guide souls from the realm of the dying to the realm of the eternal. It is the bridge between the apocalypse and paradise.
Oh, wow. That's a great concept. The train begins to cross an old, massive bridge over an ocean. She walks through the cars until she enters what the text calls the heart car. In the center of this car are open, cupped palms made entirely of green emerald.
But the journey isn't quite over, is it?
Not yet. Outside the windows, the sky goes pitch black. The final antagonist manifests. It is an enormous, red, blood-leaking skull with its mouth wide open, surrounded by crackling lightning, attempting to swallow the entire train whole.
We see the ultimate visual distillation of the conflict here. Red, the color of spilled blood and death, is attempting to consume the psychopomp, the vessel of salvation.
It's a huge climax. She remembers the emerald in her bag. A voice instructs her to place it into the heart of the train. She sets the glowing stone into the green emerald hands. Instantly, the entire train begins pulsating with a blinding, brilliant green light.
The power of life pushing back.
Exactly. The green light shoots out, strikes the dark red skull, and the skull simply explodes into sparks, vanishing into thin air. The battle isn't fought with swords or machine guns or even fiery branches this time. It's a pure collision of elemental forces. The green light overrides the red death.
It is the triumph of pure spiritual essence over physical decay. The green light, representing eternal life and divine presence, doesn't even have to fight the red death. Its mere presence causes the darkness to dissolve.
So the speakers on the train announce, "Death is swallowed, life has won." Choirs of angels begin singing a beautiful hallelujah. The train itself transforms, turning golden and completely transparent.
A beautiful image.
It really is. As they pull into the final destination, she sees a golden, cube-shaped city. Jesus is standing there, reaching out a hand bearing nail marks, and Toivo is there, beaming with a huge smile. She grabs his hand, and the narrative pulls back to reveal a vision of a green, earth-shaped paradise with this perfect golden cube city rising from its center.
And that's how it ends.
Yeah, the text concludes with, "Love has won, the eternal feast has begun."
The resolution is staggering. The narrative resolves its extreme chaos, not by leaving the characters in a ruined, surviving wasteland, but by introducing total geometric perfection.
The golden cube, right.
Yes. The golden cube is a symbol of absolute divine order and structural flawlessness. It fundamentally replaces the rotting swamp and the moldy, chaotic castles from the very beginning. The journey from a black pyramid of death to a golden cube of life is complete.
It has been a wild, relentless ride. We tracked Elisa from a swampy black pyramid sucking blood from the sky, through a military invasion featuring acid nets and melted SUVs, into a burning gothic forest, past a localized acid puzzle, and finally onto a golden train bound for a cube-shaped paradise.
It is a masterclass in how shifting narrative imagery can tell a story about ultimate hope Toivo, right? Outlasting the deepest despair.
Completely.
The text demands an incredible amount of psychological endurance from the reader, but it rewards that effort with a deeply profound map of spiritual resilience.
You know, learner, you might be wondering why decoding this surreal nightmare matters to you, listening right now. When John's machine gun failed against the Black Angels, it was a direct metaphor for how we often try to solve our own modern crises with purely mechanical, exhausting solutions.
Which rarely work in the long run.
Right. So in a world that constantly bombards us with chaotic invasions and absolute information overload, what represents your personal Platform 7? When the noise gets deafening and the sky feels like it's literally falling, what is the golden key you use to find your way back to a place of peace?